Good morning and welcome to another edition of Research Fantasy presents our NBA Fantasy Baller DFS edition for Monday and Tuesday, May 8th and 9th. I'm sure this is going to be a situation where we get a couple of different two-day slates. I was reasonably convinced that this thing was going to be wrapping up pretty soon. In terms of having, basketball for a while. But Houston was able to come up on San Antonio, and Washington was able to come up on Boston to even the series. So we have definitely got a few more games to go. Cleveland obviously closed out Toronto, and tonight the Golden State Warriors look to close out the Utah Jazz. That is a good place to start. Definitely that is the most underwhelming game on the slate. One would think that Utah would bring more this time, but I think what it really comes down to is just the fact that Utah is doing the best that they can. They're down one of their better players. I really don't look at the George Hill situation as being something that keeps them from moving on. I think that in 2015-2016, the Jazz finished in what would have been the number 9 seed in the Western Conference. The Jazz making it this far is an evidence of how that program is progressing. I think the biggest weaknesses really for the Jazz have just been player selection in the draft. There's not enough to get excited about. I don't want to go too much onto a basketball discussion as opposed to DFS, but having to bring in George Hill when you've swung and missed with Dante Exum and Raul Neto, just a little bit underwhelming all around, but I think it's a franchise moving in the right direction. Would not shock or surprise me within the next 2 years if we saw the Jazz and the Nuggets, for that matter, in the conference finals. Anyway, have to approach this from the perspective that George Hill could miss the game again. He's questionable. And with a toe, I mean, it's so tough. I don't know if you've seen how gnarled basketball players' feet become because of all the movement. Google James Harden feet or LeBron James feet sometimes, and you'll see some pretty gnarly pictures. But anyway, so toe is something you don't really want to mess around with in basketball. The gut reaction here, down 3-0. It could go either way. I mean, I could see a case being made for Hill trying to give it a go, but to me, on the Golden State side of the ball, Kevin Durant pretty much underpriced. I don't know how and why Steph Curry's price went up because he's just underperformed. Klay Thompson has been on the side of a milk carton the entire playoffs. Who knows where he's been. Draymond Green off and on, but the deal with Draymond is so much of his production can be unpredictable because he relies so heavily on peripheral stats like steals and blocks. But, I mean, he has 2 out of 3 solid games against the Jazz. Not my favorite play, but somebody I definitely will have some exposure to. Shelvin Mack, assuming George Hill does not play, is still too cheap to not use. Rudy Gobert finally starting to show some fight. But other than that, I don't think I really like anyone else. And then, of course, I jumbled the teams up there. Anyway, on the Golden State side, it's definitely Durant, maybe some Steph, some Draymond. That's about it there. On the Utah side of the ball, Gordon Hayward has to do more heavy lifting with George Hill out. Like I said, Shelvin Mack fully in play, Rudy Gobert coming around. Other than that, I'm not touching too much. If it had been anyone, I guess the Houston-San Antonio series, though, has been pretty solid in terms of fantasy production. So, I mean, I guess in comparison, I would probably just rather take guys from the Houston-San Antonio game, which is where we go next. That will be played on Tuesday night. I haven't checked the schedule to see how things pan out, but we could definitely end up seeing a 2-game Wednesday slate. Maybe the sites decide to run a 3-game Tuesday to Wednesday slate and include this game in on it. I do see that the other Eastern Conference series would run Wednesday. The Golden State series would run Wednesday again if need be. Yeah, so we could definitely end up seeing some more games here, no question about it. Let's talk. The Spurs just came out a little bit flat this game after 2 really solid consecutive games. You know, it's still the playoffs can get repetitive. What am I supposed to say? Kawhi Leonard makes a good play. Okay, you knew that. You know, this is going to be back in San Antonio. They look to go up 3-2. You're looking at Kawhi. You're looking at LaMarcus. You're looking at Powell. You're looking at Patty Mills. Jonathan Simmons, I think he's put together a couple decent performances. You know, one has to wonder, though, how much of that is just because they were pretty well blown out by the end of the third quarter. Houston side of the ball, you know, James Harden, very disappointing in this series from a fantasy perspective. From a real-life perspective, absolutely irrelevant. It does not matter how he looks, because if they're winning, they're winning. That's really all that it comes down to. If you scan the stat sheet, Trevor Ariza, solid game. Patrick Beverley definitely didn't kill you, and Eric Gordon had a nice night as well. And that's basically where I'm sticking for the remainder of the playoffs with Houston. It's going to be Ariza, Capella, Beverley, Harden, Eric Gordon. Those are the guys I'm going to focus around. I think you could build solid lineups with those guys. Boston has Terry Rozier that's priced really cheap that continues to perform. Shelvin Max underpriced, at least on FanDuel. So I think there's a lot of routes you could still go. It'll be interesting to see how things go from here. Ultimately, in the position where we could close a series out tonight, we know that there will be at least 2 more games in both the Boston-Washington and San Antonio-Houston series. So we've got a couple of days left where we'll have, you know, probably 2-day NBA DFS slates, and I fully expect the sites to play it up pretty nicely where they, do a Monday, Tuesday, then Tuesday, Wednesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, Thursday, Friday. So you'll be able to start new action every night, which is a good method to work with. It's a little frustrating when you have to write about these games and you have to do something every night with baseball going on, but nonetheless, that'll wrap it up for today. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel below. Head over to researchfantasy.com, sign up for our NBA mailing list, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Research and Win, and join us again tomorrow.